This is Unfiltered. Welcome back to another episode. I am Mike Ginn. Of course, Unfiltered brought to you on the Fighters First Network, fightersfirst.shop. Check out all the latest in combat sports inspired streetwear. Get some of the latest, greatest show Unfiltered shirts, other shirts on our network, Art of MMA, of course. And then, of course, we got a lot of fighters we're working with right now, most famously the British Bulldog Estate. So check that out. The Mechanic, Brandon Catino, Alex Soto, a number of other fighters we're working with. So check all that out, fightersfirst.shop, and, of course, the Fighters First Network right here where you're watching this show now. My guest this week is a professional heavyweight boxer. You might know him if you're in the New England area pretty well. He's a former New England heavyweight champion. He recently fought on the undercard of the Manny Pacquiao fight. Appreciate you taking the time, Justin. How you doing today, buddy?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate you having me. I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. You know, not many people ask me that. I appreciate that. Thank you. Unfortunately, your last fight didn't go your way. You finally got out to Vegas, fought on the Manny Pacquiao undercard. We'll talk about that. You got your next fight coming up in November to get back on the winning trail, back in New England. Or no, actually, you're gonna be down in Myrtle Beach, right?
That's actually that fight actually got canceled due to some unfortunate circumstances.
Are they going to try to keep you on the card with a new opponent, or are you guys just looking for a new fight?
Yeah, we'll be doing something shortly after that.
Okay, well, hopefully get back in the ring soon to get that blemish off your record and get back that winning taste in your mouth. But before we get to everything you're working on now, let's go back a little bit. Let's tell people a little bit about Justin Rolfe, people that might not know. You're from Fairfield, Maine, New England born and raised. When did you first discover your love for boxing? Like, when did that become a thing for you?
So I started boxing amateur about 10 years ago. When I first started, I started doing it just for a boxing workout. And then I found the love for boxing, and I decided to continue doing that amateur. And in 2018, I went pro. I just there's certain things about the sport that you just fall in love with, and I fell in love quick with the sport, and I decided to take off with it, and I trained real hard. I won two Northern New England Golden Glove titles and a New England Golden Glove title before I went pro, and then I decided to turn pro. I won a New England Heavyweight Championship, and I won the ABF Atlantic title, the American Boxing Federation Atlantic title.
Now, boxing wasn't always your goal. I know originally, like you said you played baseball, you said you played basketball. Around 15, you discovered powerlifting. I don't know too many high school kids that kind of like jump into like powerlifting like that. What got you into powerlifting?
Yeah, so at my high school, at Carrabeck High School, we had a powerlifting coach who ran a powerlifting program called Willpower out of there. And I started doing it just to get, become better athletically, be able to jump higher in basketball, be able to run faster in football, those things. And then I ended up really realizing I had potential to be good in powerlifting. When I first started, I was lifting more than a lot of people were lifting that had been doing it for 2 years now, some of the juniors in school. And so I really decided to take off with the powerlifting. But as I started to powerlift, I realized you had to get bigger. So it became harder to do basketball and football the same way. So I really focused on powerlifting. And I ended up ultimately winning, quite a few titles in powerlifting, but I won a national title when I was 15 in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
That's awesome. Was it an extension of the football? Like a lot of times I see these weightlifting programs in high school, especially in my high school, like it was all an extension of the football program. Was that kind of how it started, or was this like standalone?
Well, standalone, I decided myself, personally, I've always tried to be the best I can be athletically. And, kind of like, as you said, I knew it would help. I knew a lot of athletes did powerlifting or weightlifting to help with, just the explosiveness even, of in football and basketball. So I did it, standalone. I decided to do it myself to better my athletic career. And then, like I said, I fell in love with it, and I took off with the powerlifting. And now we're incorporating all of that, the powerlifting, into boxing now. We're working on the strength of my squat. I had a 900-pound squat ultimately before I was done powerlifting.
Wow.
And so my coach is always telling me, incorporate that 900-pound squat into that hook. When you come up out of that dip, come up with that squat power. And, so
use your legs. Yeah. 100%.
yeah. So ultimately, everything has worked out, great. And, everything's led to one thing and it's led to another. And, now we're just trying to bring it all together.
So what inspiration do you really have coming from a small town like Fairfield, Maine? So like there's not much around there. I mean, obviously Maine has a lot going on, but as far as like you hear about people coming out of like Boston or other places in New England, obviously. What was life growing up in Fairfield, Maine? Was it quiet? Was it hectic? What was life like?
So life was, quiet and hectic, I guess. You find things that you love and you can focus on them. There's not so much distractions, really. There's not a lot of nightclubs, things like that to get distracted. Sure, you can get distracted and go party and hang out and drink at bonfires, things like that, but around here growing up, it was really, you tried to find things that you love to do and you follow them. You learn to work hard real young. I've done everything from hay in fields to splitting wood and stacking wood and, plowing driveways, plowing snow out of driveways. You learn a lot of different.
That's why I moved down to Tampa, so I don't have to deal with snow no more.
Yeah. Well, no, you learn a lot of different things up here, a lot of hard life lessons and a lot of things I'm grateful for. But like I said, ultimately, there's not a lot of distractions. So when you find something that you love, you can put a lot of time into it. And another thing too is, one thing I'm trying to inspire by people around here is I've heard my whole entire life growing up and I still hear it. You got to get out of Maine if you really want to do this. You got to get out of Maine if you really want to do that. I'm trying to be that guy that tells people, no, you don't got to get out of Maine. You got to work extra harder. You got to just not get distracted, but you can do whatever you want to do and you can stay right here in this great state of Maine.
Yeah, I've always hated that too. I agree with you. I came up in a lot of different situations, and one of the things I adapted very early on was jumping into tech and some other things. I played a lot of sports as well, but in the tech industry, it was always kind of like the same thing, a little differently, where you had to be in like San Francisco, or you had to be, later on nowadays, it's like down in Austin or somewhere like that to be seen. And especially in 2021, I definitely believe that you can be anywhere and be seen. Like there's no shortage of cameras, there's no shortage of social media. And if you win, it takes care of everything else, right? Like if you sat there and knock every single person out, they're gonna find you in Maine. They don't care where you are. So there's definitely something to be said about that. I agree with that.
In words.
Exactly. But what was like, so growing up in Maine, kind of quiet. Did you follow boxing as a kid?
I always followed boxing as a kid, but it was the big names. I never really was a huge fan where I watched every fight every weekend. I followed Joe Frazier, Mike Tyson, James Toney, like you were saying, the guys that were making noise and knocking people out, and you were hearing a lot about. It wasn't until I started boxing, actually, when I was about 20 or 21, when I really started to look up different names and start to really, dig deeper into the history of boxing. But like I said, I found that love for the sport. I tell you, I did all the history I could, and there's not many names that I couldn't name.
Yeah, you kind of came up. You came up like during a weird era in heavyweight boxing, because they're really nowadays so many great heavyweights. There's probably like 3 or 4, and then there's just everybody else kind of bunched together. And you name a lot of those names, obviously the Mike Tysons, go back further, the Joe Fraziers, Muhammad Ali's. Later on, like during my childhood, I'm way older than you, but my childhood, you had the Lennox Lewis's, the Riddick Bowe's, the Evander Holyfields, obviously Mike Tyson. Heavyweight boxing was the marquee across everything. And nowadays, you have a few. Obviously, we just saw Wilder and Fury go at it to complete their trilogy, which drew big numbers. Obviously, Joshua and Usyk just had their fight, which drew pretty big as well. So it's kind of back on top of the marquee a little bit. but we also kind of grew up in an era where some of the smaller fighters kind of stole the show. The Floyd Mayweathers, the De La Hoyas, the Manny Pacquiao, who you just fought on the undercard for. So it's
Absolutely.
kind of interesting to see that you always kind of did favor the heavyweights a little bit, even though you were at the time kind of a smaller guy, right?
I've always been a bigger guy. When I was 15, I weighed about 175 pounds. So
Yeah, you and me both, but that's because I played a lot of sports. I'm actually not far in size from you as well. So, but yeah, I know growing up, like that was who we looked up to, though, right? When we were like growing up,
yeah.
like that was all the smaller guys were making all the names. So it's kind of crazy to like hear you still like go back and name some of those big heavyweights as you're getting older. Once you kind of transition from powerlifting, how did you actually like jump into boxing?
So there was actually a point in my life after powerlifting that I hit a rough road and a rough patch, and I actually found myself in jail. I had got in trouble for selling marijuana, and I had a burglary and theft charge. We got caught in an abandoned building, and I did some time in jail. And when I got out of jail, I said, "Man, I want to change my life. I don't want to do this. This experience was enough for me. I've learned my lesson." So I had got back into the gym, and I started working out. And I said, you know what, maybe I'm going to pick up powerlifting again. I wasn't quite sure, but I knew I needed the gym back in my life. And that was when I saw this poster that said boxercise class, and I decided to take it. And, I started doing some boxing workouts, and I loved the workout. I said, man, you can get a great workout in a half hour, an hour time. You can get a workout like, I used to get in 3 hours.
Yeah,
And then
boxing
I
is
started
incredible
doing
for the
that.
whole
And that
body.
was where I met, my amateur boxing coach. And, now here I am.
Yeah, boxing is such an incredible workout and it's kind of taken off the last like 10 years too. It's like something that people do just not even for like fighting, but for conditioning. So it's kind of crazy that's kind of what sucked you back in.
I love boxing. You get people from all aspects of life. You get people like me that had a rough road and wanted to change their life, and you see a lot of people change their life. You see a lot of people, like you said. I mean, there's actors and famous people that are doing boxing now for the boxing workout because it's so good. You see people that are in college and they've had a stressful week and they need to come hit the bag and release some stress before their exam. I mean, there's every single aspect of life boxing can help, and people find it. My coach, he used to have a group of I believe it was like 100 special needs students that came in, and he'd work with these special needs students once a week. I'd go in and work with him, here and there once a week with him, and it would change their lives. They would leave happy. They would leave, some of them would come in shaken. They wouldn't be shaken anymore. I've seen so much from this sport. I'll tell you, boxing, not just boxing, the fighting world in general, it really can be a beautiful thing. It really can. It's all about how you portray it and also what you see. A lot of people only see the violence. They only watch and they only see the fight inside, and they only see two guys beat each other up. They don't see the beautiful side of
The
the sport.
gladiator aspect of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and a lot of people don't see the science of it. And nowadays, you even have like moms and stuff going in doing boxing stuff like that. Some of these title gyms around the country, stuff like that.
yeah.
It's just fantastic, just to see people kind of embracing. I think it even like kind of. I hate to give this credit, but almost kind of like goes back to some of that Tai Bo stuff they used to do with Billy Blanks. Like people started realizing some of these martial arts and boxing, kickboxing, all of them were just more than just combat. They were also just great ways to get your body right, but also get your mind right. Um,
Absolutely.
if you don't mind me asking, how long did you serve for doing those crimes?
I did 6 months.
6 months? Okay.
Yep.
So you come back out 6 months later, you finally get back in the gym, you think about powerlifting, you kind of like fall into boxing as well. And of course, you were a fan of boxing, so it kind of made it easier.
Yes.
From that point of starting training, how long was it between then till you had your first amateur fight? And because I know you're a two-time Golden Gloves champion, so how did that all start? When was the first amateur fight that you had?
So it was about a year after I started boxing. I had my first amateur fight, and ended up getting stopped in the second round because my nose bled too much. And my nose started bleeding in the first round, and the doctors
Amateurs,
called
they
it.
stopped that, yeah.
And it's actually quite interesting. I lost my first three amateur fights, And it got to the point where I was like, man, is this for me? I love this. But, my coach said, if you quit now, it would be the worst mistake you ever made. So I ended up winning my next 2 fights I fought. He entered me in the Golden Gloves. I won the Northern New England Golden Gloves that same year that I lost them 3 fights. I ended up winning the New England Golden Gloves right after that. It was actually quite the story at the beginning of my career.
Does New England do it? I know like every state kind of has a different format for their Golden Gloves. Do they do it in the tournament like fashion as well?
So they do it in a tournament fashion. Northern New England, in New England, they do the Northern New England Golden Gloves, Southern New England, Central New England, and then they all fight. So I won the Northern New England Golden Gloves. It was a 3-weekend event, and then I qualified for the New England Golden Gloves. And then I had to fight the 4 winners out of the 3 other winners. Those 4 of us come together, and it was a 2-weekend event, and we all had to fight each other. And like I said, I was a better man that year.
So you do that, and then what? 2 years later, you come back and do it again.
Yeah.
What led you to finally saying, okay, I've had all these amateur fights now. Now it's time. I want to make some money. I want to get in there. I want to get pro. Your first fight, I believe, was in 2018. So you've only been a pro now for a little over 3 years. You're still a baby in the sport, kind of. 2018 against Michael Hansen. What was that debut like? Like, were there butterflies? Were you excited? How did all that come about?
Yeah, that was wild. That was I was excited. I had butterflies. Me and him had a little bad blood. There was
A lot of shit talking during the like pre-fight.
Leading up to the fights. I won't get too into it, but he ended up costing me more money. Ended up threatening pulling out. There was just a lot of issues that this guy made for me leading up to my pro debut, and I said, I went into that fight a little angry as well. There was a lot of different things, I was supposed to take emotions into fights, and I learned my pro debut, even though I won and I won in a good fashion, I still, I learned a lesson. Don't take emotions and let things get to you, and bring them into your fight.
I think every fight is different, but yeah.
Right. Well, that fight I had taunted him at one point, and that's not who I wanted to be. I wanted to, I'm a humble, respectful. I've showed that throughout the rest of my fights through my career. But that first fight, like I said, I learned a lot of lessons. There was a lot of things, and but it was a great fight, and and here we are. Here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think every fighter is kind of different when it comes to that. Some people, I think it's always good to be a little nervous. Like you've always heard a lot of professional fighters talk about a little bit of nerves keeps you sharp, keeps you on edge. You don't want to get too over emotional in the ring because you'll make a mistake. But a little bit of anger sometimes it can be helpful because helps you unleash that beast a little bit. So I'm kind of like a little bit of both. I've seen it with so many fighters. I come more from an MMA world, but so many fighters just like if you have a little bit of edge, because you don't want to come in there flat either. Like that could be the worst. That's even worse than having too much emotion.
Nerves keep you humble. Nerves keep you sharp. It's I use the nerves for good. That makes you. The nerves are what make you not want to get hit. Makes you move your head and be quick and not walk straight into punches. So, but my pro debut happened in Skowhegan, Maine. I was fortunate because I was used to fighting in Lowell, Massachusetts, where the New England Golden Gloves was. I had fought in Mass quite a few times, so I had that in my favor going into my pro debut. Even though it was my pro debut, I was nervous, because it was my pro debut. There was a lot of things that were in my favor that night.
You could tell you're from Maine because you actually said Massachusetts right. You didn't say like the Massachusetts. You properly enunciated it. I was like, oh, yeah, he's from Maine. They say things properly up there. I have a lot of family from New England, so I get it all the time. My grandfather from New Hampshire, and I have a lot of family from like Lawrence, Massachusetts, and stuff like that. So I'm very familiar with some of the accents.
In 10978 in Lawrence, Mass. There's a boxing gym there in Lawrence, Mass. I spar at.
Yeah, my great aunt used to live out there. She moved away because my grandfather's from Plastow, New Hampshire. We're not from there, but he lived a lot of his life, and my aunts and great aunts and all them all lived up there. So we used to, as kids, like would always spend a lot of my summer like going up to New England, New Hampshire, and stuff like that. So it was always a great memory for me personally to get up there. except for the giant. Like they talk about us having mosquitoes in Florida. Let me tell you something. Those mosquitoes in New England are like baseball size. Like I think y'all invented the screen porch.
Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me.
Because like you talk about, you could have trained boxing just by going out in the backyard and trying to hit some of these things. Like gigantic. So you take a few months, you kind of like make sure you get a little bit refined, you step back in the ring, you got Steve Vukosa, doesn't go your way, you lose a majority decision against him in Hampton. But from that point, you kind of got very active. You won 2 out of the next 3, including a draw. And then the pandemic hits. So as most people know in combat sports, pandemic kind of shut down so many things. You went from being pretty active in 2019, especially the second half of 2019, to not having a fight for another like 9 months until you fight Tracy Johnson. What was that? Did that layoff hurt you, or did it like help you like get healthy and get stronger and get better?
So it's actually funny that you asked that. So after I fought Steve Vukosa, he ended up, me and him, we became real close friends after that. We started sparring every weekend. I earned his respect through that fight. Steve Vukosa, if you look into him a little further, he actually trained with Freddie Roach. He sparred with James Toney. There's a video right on YouTube of him and James Toney sparring. He actually goes back pretty far in the sport. He had over 100 amateur fights, fought at the national level. I fought him in my second pro fight because I wanted to make a statement. I knew being from Maine, I had to take a chance. I had to take a big fight. Nobody was going to know who I was, and nobody was going to take me serious unless I showed I was serious. So me and my coach, we got that offer for Steve Vukosa, and we talked about it, and we decided, let's take it. We knew, Steve was arguably older. He was, I believe he was like 42 at the time. So we took the fight, and
he'd been fighting since like 2001.
If it was a close fight, if it was a tough fight, if I could happen to win this fight, it would be great for me. So majority decision. He won. On the judges' scorecards. We ended up sparring every weekend. He ended up getting a fight for the WBC US title against Joey Cusimano. He ended up winning that fight. This was right after me and him fought. That bumped me up in ratings because Steve Vukosa is now the WBC US champ. And he won that unanimous decision, but lost to me majority decision. So now me and Steve continue to train. I'm getting these fights in that time period between training with Steve, and we meet some other real important people in this sport. I'm starting to meet some real important people in Massachusetts: Jimmy Farrell, Martin Grealish, some big names that started helping us. So now during this layoff between these fights and Tracy Johnson, we had met these people and we're working on a lot of things they showed us. We're continuing to spar with Steve. Me and my coach are both growing in the sport, becoming better. And I feel, for me personally, the layoff helps just as much as it, could have hurt me.
I mean, that's perfect, because like a lot of people didn't take advantage of the time. Unfortunately, this happened. We didn't really have any control over what happened with COVID and the pandemic and everything hitting, and you hope everybody stays safe and healthy. But we had no control over that. But what we did have control over was what we did with our time that we had. And to be able to train, to be able to get better.
Oh, the volume. It's the volume.
Yeah, just those things. Like, and like you said, Steve's been fighting since like 2001. So he's no stranger to the sport. Cool. So you were training. Sorry, we had a little technical difficulties. Have to hop back in there. So you were training with Steve during the break. Of course, Steve goes back to fighting all the way back to 2001. So he's no stranger to the sport. Like you said, people like Freddie Roach, James Toney, all those amazing names that are legendary in the sport of boxing. And it was really cool that I was saying before that it was really cool that you took advantage, because not a lot of people took advantage of the time. Like, we can't control what happened with the pandemic. We can't control what happened with COVID. We hope everybody's safe and healthy and all that goes along with it. But what we could control was our time. Like, we could control what we did with our time. And I know a lot of fighters were having a hard time booking fights. A lot of fighters were having trouble even getting into their own gyms. Like, a lot of gyms were completely shut down. Was Maine a little bit more open because it's a little bit quieter and more laid back, or were all the gyms shut down there as well?
So it's a little more open because it's more quiet and laid back, but there was still, the mask mandates, policies. We had to follow strict guidelines, but we were able to make it work, as long as we followed the guidelines that were given to us.
Yeah, because I know a lot of fighters, especially in Jersey, like they were like kicked out of their gym for a while. Eventually, they got back in. They were so excited when they got to train again that they were
Yeah.
like, it was like Christmas. They were
I mean,
like,
there were days me and my coach were out on the football field. He'd have me do 100-meter dashes, and then we'd be doing mitts in the middle of the field, because it was easier than wearing a mask while working in the gym and stuff. So,
yeah, being outdoors, yeah, absolutely. And
but we never
luckily,
stopped working. That's one thing, unless, knock on wood, unless injuries happen or something like that, we don't stop working.
so you get back in the ring against Tracy Johnson. Was it kind of like starting over again after all that long layoff, or were you just excited to kind of keep going again?
I was really excited to keep going again. That was a fight that I look forward to. Tracy, he had been in a lot of big fights around here. He had a big name coming up. You'd hear a lot about him.
Of course, you had already fought him, or like the last fight before the pandemic, so it was like a rematch.
Yeah. We fought right before that. We had fought in Quincy, and then it was such a good fight. They called it a draw, and so they wanted the fight to happen again, and then we ended up fighting for the New England.
That's very diplomatic of you. That's very diplomatic. Not very many fighters are talking about how it was a great fight, so it was a draw. There's always a fighter that feels they got robbed.
I let people say that for me. I try to be humble and
Screw that. We want honesty here. We want honesty. But I appreciate the diplomatic response. So you have a couple like ups and downs. Got the loss to Mike Marshall, but then you bounce back quickly against Trevino. How did the fight on the undercard of the Pacquiao Ugas fight card? How did that fight take place to get you kind of out of New England and into Las Vegas? How did that fight come about?
So by winning the ABF title, I believe that kind of helped, bring me up in the rankings and help my name a little. And I had just before this, I had signed with Granite Chin Promotions. Chris Triady now, he's my promoter, and he has some good connections in this sport, and he was able to secure the fight for me. We got the offer for the fight, and we jumped right on it, knowing it was a good opportunity. It was a good fight. I feel like it was a really good fight personally. I feel like the referee could have done a better job in his job. My job is to fight. His job is to referee the fight. I do feel that fight was called very early. He didn't even give me time to fight. Anybody that watches the fight, I think, will see I was in that fight, and I don't believe there was any reason for that one to be stopped. I try to be humble, but there's no way for me to be humble about that fight. That decision was out.
And to set it up real quick for people at home that weren't following. So he fights Steven Torres on the undercard of the Manny Pacquiao fight. Steven Torres, undefeated fighter on the way up. And for the better part, there is a huge kind of size discrepancy. He had a lot of reach on you. He had a lot of height on you. He's what, like 6'6", 6'7"?
6'8".
Yeah, 6'8". So he's huge. Like, you watch it, I think you can still go back and watch it on Fox Sports. And he's
on YouTube as well.
Yeah, YouTube as well. And he's just huge. Like, there's a huge difference. But you got in on the inside early. You got in a few shots early. You never got knocked down. Never like lost consciousness. But about 27 seconds, I think that's the number left in the round. The referee stopped the fight. Do you think that was just a case of the referee not knowing you and not knowing your toughness, or do you think that he was actually genuinely concerned that you were taking some punishment?
So I think the first thing you said, I don't think he knew me, and I don't think he took the time to watch any of my fights. Steven Torres at the end there, he started picking up and throwing some punches. I start hearing him breathing with the punches, putting extra into them. So I say, all right, I'm going to let you throw. With all due respect, he couldn't hurt me. I mean, he had hit me a couple times. I felt nothing. I said, okay, you want to go and expend your energy, wear yourself out, go ahead. I'm going to cover up, let you do that. there's 27 seconds left in the round. I had heard that 30-second timer. I knew that that the round was about to end. I said, go ahead. You're going to go back and have a tough corner. I'm going to go back, be energized. We're going to come out and finish business in the second round.
And the ref never gave you the chance.
No, he never allowed me to fight back. I don't know. I try to be respectful towards him, but I don't believe he did his work. I don't think he did his job. He should have, known the type of fighter I am, known the size difference, knew it was going to be an ugly fight at times.
You think the size difference played effect in it too? That he maybe thought you were getting more damage because of the size difference?
I do think that might have been the case. I don't. I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to try to put the guy down or nothing, but I think there was some things that went into effect there that shouldn't have. And I believe that he did a bad job that night reffing that fight. I mean, the fight right before me, the guy came back and needed stitches. I didn't, one stumble backwards. The guy, he never put me on the ropes. I mean, I believe we're pretty close to the center of the ring when the fight was stopped. And I was in the middle of throwing a punch. You never see that. You never see them call a fight in the middle of the ring while two guys are still throwing, unless one guy's, taking a beating.
Yeah, and stumbling everywhere, and the ropes are holding them up or something like that. Have you ever been knocked down in your pro career?
No.
So never knocked down, never stopped. I mean, until this one, and this was questionable at best.
Yeah, no, no. I don't understand what happened. I just don't understand what happened. You watched before the fight. They did nothing but boost him up. They talked about him. They didn't talk about me at all. They never even mentioned me being the current American Boxing Federation champion at the time. I mean, it was a tough night for me. I'm working on trying to get back out there and make a statement next time.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we get another fight scheduled. You were originally scheduled to fight in November. Hopefully that gets bounced back. What are you doing now to keep in shape and work with? Are you working with somebody like Steve, Vocosa, or any of those kind of people, working with them right now?
Yeah, we always still go down. We still go down and work with them guys in Mass. Me and my coach, Mike Leary, are working here at home. We're really working on a lot of footwork-based stuff, trying to get me faster on my feet, put me in, better angles and better positions. We're hoping, if we can't get a rematch against Steven Torres, we're hoping to get another fight out there sooner than later and be able to make a statement. So we're working on every place that we can, and the areas that we felt, we need to work in more. And, my next fight, no matter where it is, I plan to make a statement.
So over your whole career, who do you think so far is giving you the most trouble inside that ring? Obviously, Steven Torres wasn't really a great situation because you never really had a chance, never even got out of the first round. You never even had a chance to have any kind of strategy. You just kind of did what it did. So out of the rest of your fighters, who was somebody that gave you the most trouble?
So I think Steve Vukosa, I'd have to say. First round against Steve Vukosa, not even a minute into the fight, he punches me in the throat. He's a southpaw, and the angle change, coming right out, it was just, I got hit, and it landed right in the throat. I was like, oh man, I couldn't breathe. I'm thinking to myself, wow, so I continue to fight through it. 30 seconds after that, he throws an uppercut, and I go to slip it, and it lands right here in my chest. The next day, I have paperwork for it. I went to the hospital. He broke my rib with a punch, an upper rib. The doctor at the hospital said he's never seen a rib like that broken other than a motorcycle accident. You just don't see that, And then in the second round, Steve Vukosa ruptures my eardrum. The next day, that's the reason I went to the hospital, is because I woke up and there was blood on my pillow from my ear. All this happened the first round, beginning of the second round. And, I fought through that whole fight to a majority decision. But I tell you what, that still to this day, that was a fight that every time I think about a fight, that one's the one that comes back to my mind.
Yeah, I mean, he's a veteran. He knew where to mess you up.
I will tell you what, I learned a lot that fight. That's still the fight from that fight and my next fight. That was the biggest improvement in time of my career yet.
Yeah, and your next fight was your knockout where you came out and just knocked Neto out. So definitely, jumping up and improving like that. So we're trying to stay in shape. We're trying to get this fight going, and we're working out with these people. What do you hope to accomplish in the next year as far as getting your career back on track, winning your ways? What are your kind of your goals for the next year or so?
So my next goals for the next year is to just continue to these next fights. I just want to win. I'm gonna train as hard as I can, improve as much as I can, make as big a statements as I can, and I want to get back out to Vegas. That's my ultimate goal, is to get back on the big stage and make a statement on the big stage. I know I have a lot left to give in this sport, and I know I have a lot of career left to go. And I know I belong out there. I belong on the big stage. I know this is it. This is what I want to do, and this is where I'm going to be. I'm not going nowhere.
Any thoughts to Atlantic City?
Until I'm done.
Any thoughts to like going down to Atlantic City? That's a little closer too.
We've actually had a couple offers for Atlantic City, but a couple times it was right when we had signed a contract, or it was right after a fight, something come up. So I do believe we will fight in Atlantic City sooner than later.
Yeah, I know, and I don't want to get political or anything like that, but like with New York doing a lot of the vaccine passports, some of that's messing up New Jersey fights too. But yep. New Jersey has been kind of becoming a hotbed again for combat sports. So Atlantic City's kind of been coming back up. So it's always like a nice big payday for anybody that gets down there as well. Obviously, Las Vegas is always the goal of any boxer. You want to be under the bright lights. You fought at T-Mobile Arena, which has held some of the biggest fights in the history, especially the last like 5 or 6 years of combat sports. So definitely something to get back out there.
Yeah, my promoter is always those are usually the offers, right? Like you just said, Atlantic City, California, Vegas. If I don't fight New England, it's usually one of them spots where I'll be fighting at. Myrtle Beach was I was just scheduled to fight there. And so
now that
I'll be scheduling something soon. I'll be announcing something soon, and I can't wait to get back in the ring in front of everybody.
Now that you got that taste of getting out of New England for a little bit, it's time to kind of like spread your wings a little bit.
Absolutely.
California's another hotbed, especially out like LA, somewhere like that. Fighting the Staples Center or something like that would be incredible. Before I let you get out of here, let me ask you this. On the current state of the heavyweight division, obviously Tyson Fury right now is at the top of everything, who's another fighter that's huge and would probably be a difficult matchup for you. I mean, anything can happen in a fight, especially with heavyweights. One punch can change everything. You saw how many times Wilder and Fury knocked each other down and almost out with just I mean, I don't want to play on words, but it was a wild fight. Like it was just everybody. It was just bombs, bomb after bomb after bomb, and Fury landed the last bomb.
That was a great night for the sport of boxing.
Absolutely, because it put eyes back on the sport. And I'd say on a technical side of the sport, just a couple weeks before that, when Usyk beat Joshua, just that technical aspect I mean, obviously Usyk's an undefeated former undisputed cruiserweight champion, goes up to heavyweight. He has some of the best, just pure boxing skills I've seen in that division in a long time.
Yeah, he trains with Lomachenko.
Yeah. How do you think you match up with somebody like that who is a little closer to your size?
So I honestly think I can hang in there with any of these guys. I think I'd match up well. Styles make fights, and I believe I do things. I have my style. The way I box, the way I fight is different enough, elusive enough to hang with any of these guys. But I do give respect where respect's due. And Usyk, man, I tell you, that would be a tough fight. Fury would be a tough fight. There's no doubt about it. But I would absolutely love to get in the ring with any one of them men and show what I got.
That's a good political answer, I guess.
I'll tell you another name that's on the come up that I cannot wait to stand across the ring from one of these days, sooner than later. I'm hoping first I can get, at least get back in there with Torres and settle the unfinished business that I feel we have. But Jared Anderson, he's been making a name. He's a new one coming up, and I've been pretty impressed with watching him. And I've been saying to myself, man, I can't wait to be in the ring with that boy. So that's a name to look for too. He's exciting to watch.
Well, I appreciate your time, and I'll let you get out of here. 29 years old, as far as heavyweights go, you're just a baby. Heavyweights can fight almost seemingly forever. 6-3-1. Definitely somebody to keep an eye out on. I appreciate you taking the time today. We'll definitely put in the description everywhere people can keep track of you as far as your training and as far as your next fight announcements and stuff like that, so people can keep up with you on social media and obviously go back and watch some of your fights. Like you said, the Torres fight is available on YouTube if you want to go and see whether I'll be politically this time, whether he got robbed or not, or stopped too early. I will say that watching that fight back, it looked like you took a couple shots, but at the same time, you were throwing back. And anytime, it kind of reminds me of, to a much lesser extent, I don't know how much MMA you watch, but Sean O'Malley versus Chris Mutino.
Yeah, oh yeah.
He was in the middle of throwing a punch when Herb Dean stopped that fight too, which when you said that, it kind of like immediately, that was my first thought of like throwing a punch while you're getting stopped, which is something because the ref always says, fight back, fight back, fight back, show you want to fight. And you were doing that.
So. Landed a couple shots, and I look at it's a heavyweight division. I mean, of course he's going to land a couple shots. I mean, they didn't phase me. I didn't stagger across the ring. I wasn't, I wasn't out on my feet at any time. It's a heavyweight fight in Vegas. At the you make it to the top. You're in Vegas fighting, a heavyweight fight. I just don't see how any referee would look at that situation and stop it. It's just, to me, it was just, unbelievable.
It was a strange situation as a fan watching. I will tell you, as a fan watching, it was a strange situation because, like, even if you got knocked down as a heavyweight, multiple knockdowns is par for the course.
Yeah.
So. Real quick, shout out to Chris, one of your trainers, put this all together. I appreciate that. I appreciate you taking the time. Of course, ladies and gentlemen at home, Fighters First, fightersfirst.shop. Check it out. Support the brand, support great shows like this, and support the fighters. Always Fighters First. Justin, I want to thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
We'll definitely follow what's going on with you. And ladies and gentlemen, we're out.